what I wanna, innovate what I'm gonna. You can hate all you wanna, but you sold your pajama. Now I ain't a prima donna, but I built what I wanna. You can say my vision's wrong, the tune of my song broke my thumb, banging to my own drum. Broke my thumb, banging to my own drum. Broke my thumb, banging to my own drum. Hootin' and clapping, boots I am a strapping, a click click clacking. Hurrah! Bootstrapping in America. Yeah, bootstrapping in America.
Christy, we're back. Bootstrapping in America.
Welcome to Bootstrapping in America, where we interview some of the hottest entrepreneurs in Chicago and beyond. Our guest today is Rob Sullivan, the co-founder of the international coaching and consulting company SullivanZyl. Almost 5 years ago, he was diagnosed with lymphoma in the form of massive tumors above his heart and in his neck. We're going to find out why he says that this was an absolute blessing. Please welcome Rob Sullivan. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I am fascinated with your story, and I can't wait for you to sort of share this with everybody here. This could be my first interview that I've done that I'm concentrating really more on the person's story than the evolution of the company. But I think that's all part of it here, right?
Absolutely.
So I saw that you have a psychology degree and a master in advertising. So let's first walk through your career and how that got started.
So my first job out of school was to work at Leo Burnett in advertising. I was basically denying my creative abilities. And I spent 4 years there, quickly made a transition from loving it to saying, I can't believe I don't get paid more to do this, and ended up shifting and became an options trader at the Board of Trade.
So did you know him?
No, we didn't know. He was at the Board of Trade.
Oh, he was at the Board of Trade.
Right, which I was at the SIBO.
I know, but it's all in the same neighborhood. It's right across the street.
I'm sure we've met each other at Cirrus Cafe or someplace like that back in the day.
All right. So then what? So you traded on the floor.
Right, and then after a year, I was diagnosed with narcolepsy, and so my dad is a doc at Northwestern, so I went through all the tests, but Western medicine was powerless to do anything about it. So that took me on a completely different journey to alternative medicine, and I found a healer who cured me of that.
Wow!
But the trading floor, as you can appreciate, is not a really good place to fall asleep.
That is true. No. You do need to pay attention.
Well, it depends on who you stand next. If you stood next to me, it'd be a great place for you to fall asleep, because then I could pick you off or something.
I would have just leaned.
Right,
there you go. Oh my gosh. So what happened next?
So what happened is this whole journey led to, I wrote a book early on about job search, and then it got into speaking. My dad was incredibly supportive through that. He was one of those people, who just was genuinely interested in people and did everything he could to help. So it was amazing to have that kind of support. And made a lot of bad business decisions in my 20s and 30s, but eventually got into this rhythm of speaking and coaching, and I've been having the time of my life.
So you've been doing that for like 25 years or something, right?
Exactly.
So that's amazing. So let's talk about how you started your most recent company, SullivanZyl.
Right.
But you have a business partner too, so maybe talk about like how you met him.
Well, Barry Von Zale and I met at a Johnny Clegg concert here in Chicago. It was right after the show, and I literally bought all of the CDs that the band members had, and I walked across, and Andy Ennis, the lead guitarist, looked at me, and I said, "Hey, would you mind signing these?" And he said, "Well, sure." He goes, "Why did you buy those?" Because he couldn't believe that anybody would buy all those CDs. And long story short, I became friends with the band, ended up traveling with them through France, South Africa, London, and along the way, Barry and I realized that we had not just a passion for music, but a passion for teaching. He had a workshop on creativity and innovation. I had one on listening and energy, and we decided to bring them together and create something, a just completely different training experience.
And that's amazing. And I have to give a shout out with Johnny Clegg. My husband's from South Africa. Johnny Clegg is a band that was from South Africa, but Johnny Clegg had passed away July this year.
He did, and it was heartbreaking. Right. It was one of those things that I was surprised how touched I was by it. In fact, it was 2 years ago, I think last night, that he did his final show in Chicago at Park West.
Yeah, I think I was there.
Yeah.
I think I was there. We had seen him. It's really he's a really phenomenal performer.
With him.
Mm-hmm. So then you partner with, he was the drummer, Barry was the drummer, right? And so talk about sort of how that unfolded. So you guys realized you should be doing something together.
Exactly. And so we had a lot of planning meetings and started putting things together and doing pilots. He's become somewhat of a poster child for the Henley Business School, which is out, very big in Europe. And we've just been having a ball doing doing it. We, along the way, joined forces with Jocelyn Ross, who I met because I host international travelers. And of the 900 people I've hosted, she is absolutely one of the most amazing. She speaks 4 languages, can charm anybody from a third world cab driver to a CEO. And so we said she needs to be part of the team.
So what do you mean when you say you host international travelers? Well, like, what do you mean?
Well, there's a website called couchsurfing.com, and there's 10 million people on that. So I've hosted now 900 people from 69 different countries.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you look at your co-founders, aren't they in different countries? Like, how do you guys handle that?
Well, fortunately, we all love to travel.
Okay.
So we'll meet up in London, which is where we're thinking about more or less having our home base, because that's a place that we all go to frequently. But we also do planning meetings. Like Jocelyn and I are doing a planning meeting in Turks and Caicos in January, so that'll be fun.
Okay, that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, okay, so your customer is what? Corporations or individuals? What is
mostly
your focus?
corporations. I do a lot of individual coaching too for executives and sales folks who need help with their communication style and want to make sure that they don't have any unconscious inhibitors, as I would call them.
Sure.
But mostly we work with companies.
Okay, got it. So let's. So I want to kind of dive in a little bit into the content, right?
Sure.
That you guys focus on, and one of the things you talk about is the impact of being in the flow. So,
Right.
So what exactly does that mean, and how do you get in the flow?
Sure. Being in the flow is, people often refer to it as being in the zone. And it's that place where creativity and productivity are at their peak. So how do you get there? Well, one of the things, Barry, besides playing with Johnny Clegg, played with, Peter Gabriel and Robert Plant, and he spent a lot of time touring. And so a lot of what he learned, we teach in terms of upbeats, downbeats, rhythm. And then we apply that and say, okay, how do we do that at work? How do we take a downbeat, a negative energy situation, and turn it into, it may not be a full-on upbeat, but at least we can neutralize it.
So I have to at least share this really quick. My middle daughter, I have 3 daughters, she went to a personal trainer, and she's an athlete, and he did an exercise with her that made her, it was just like slapping hands,
Okay.
right? And so, there's giggles and there's this and that, and he's like, no. He's like, you need to be in the zone. And by the end of that session, she was hitting his hands, because it's a mental mindset game, right?
Absolutely.
And that's kind of what you're talking about.
Right. And you can get people focused like that, and not just individually, but as a team. And that's part of the whole thing, is how do you get teams to work together?
Right. Got it. Okay. Very cool. So talk about agility and how that's a key to success.
Well, it's really key, because, especially for entrepreneurs, because you've got to know to fail quickly or to pivot first. Second, you want to really be thinking, am I developing this product or service because it's something that I think would be cool to sell, or am I doing it because there's a real demand for the people that I want to serve? And then 3, it's really about not over planning. It's a lot easier to turn the wheels of your car when it's moving than when it's parked in your garage.
Ooh, I like that analogy. Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah. I think when you look at, and I say this all the time too, but the top 3 reasons startups fail, the first one is that there's no customer need, right? Yeah. And that's exactly what you're talking about there.
Exactly.
All right, so let's talk about the power of storytelling.
Oh, I love this.
So how do you become a good storyteller?
Well, it's amazing, because historically that's how cultures transmitted their stories and their history, but we've lost that ability. And so a lot of times people will share a story and people will either be left uninspired, or they'll be thinking, wow, that's amazing. And so it's all about the ingredients. And, for example, I had a client, 6 months unemployed. She wasn't telling her story well, but when we included the ingredients, she was an event planner. She had a job 2 weeks later in the height of the recession. Why? Because people could look at it and say, that's incredible. How did you do that? If you can do that for them, think what you could do for me.
Yeah.
That wasn't an accident.
Okay, got it. All right. So people got to dig deeper, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So it's imperative. I love this one. I think this is really important. It's imperative to be a good listener.
Oh.
So talk about active listening.
So if I do a workshop and I ask people what they mean by active listening, they'll say, oh, it's about eye contact. It's about leaning in. I'm sorry, I can have good eye contact and I can be leaning in and I can be thinking about my grocery list. It doesn't mean I'm listening. So active listening, if you dig deep into it, there's a lot of good stuff there, but it doesn't go far enough. There's a whole level of what's not spoken that people need to pay attention to. We had a client, for example, that won a deal. It was a $500,000 deal that they were the underdog, but they won it because they recognized and resolved an unspoken objection.
Okay.
That's listening.
Got it.
And, the key thing there is, business development people in particular, we believe we're being paid to speak or not. If we believed we were being paid to listen, we'd make more money.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. Yeah. So how do you actually become or teach someone who's not a good listener today to be an active listener?
One of the key things for me is listening for emotion. Am I paying attention to what's not necessarily being said? For example, I had a guy look at me one time and he said, well, of the 13 people on my team, only 2 are moving from good to great. It sounded like a data point, like if we're lucky, the snow won't stick today. Mm-hmm. But if you were listening for emotion, you would have heard disappointment. So when I said, that sounds frustrating, I didn't try to solve his problem. I just played back what I heard. He looked at me and he lit up and he's just like, it's maddening. I was like, whoa. That would never have happened if I had gone the typical sales route and said, oh, well, we're going to work really hard to solve that problem.
Right. No, I got
that
you.
Answer too.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah, so to connect on emotion. Can we get Tom to connect on emotion?
Sure, we could try. My co-host, another show.
All right, so let's talk about managing distractions because, I feel like we're all sort of multitaskers, and while that can actually make you less productive, right? We do have a lot of distractions. So
I'm glad you said that. Multitasking is a myth. Mm-hmm. So the key thing here is boundaries. Do we have good, healthy boundaries so that when people come and interruptions show up, are we allowing it to ruin our flow? And to ruin the rhythm that we've created, or are we protecting ourselves so that we do things in the amount of time that they really should take? Yeah. That doesn't usually happen, and it can happen at a corporate level too with departments. I had one department that I worked with. They literally were trying to be good corporate citizens and being team players and helping other people when they had downtime. But the problem is, if you do a favor for somebody and you don't have a boundary around it, it becomes an expectation.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So how do you change up those distractions in a healthy way, though? Like, how do you actually try to minimize those distractions? A
lot of it is having the honest conversations with somebody. So if somebody comes in and interrupts, to be able to look at somebody and say, this is important. I want to give you my entire attention, energy, and focus. Let me finish this and I'll get back to you. Okay.
That's good. That's a good response. That's good. A good tip. Okay, I wanna talk about you.
Okay.
Okay, because you have an amazing story, and you do have a book coming out. So maybe we'll touch on the book because I think your story kind of leads into all that, right? So what's the name of your book that's coming out?
The book is called Signposts on an Inner Expedition: Trusting Your Internal GPS.
Okay.
It's about the energy, the opportunities, the guidance that surrounds us that we don't really pay attention to. Mm-hmm. So each chapter is dedicated to a different concept, like dreams, intuition, synchronicities, even alternative medicine. It's not stuff I was raised to believe, but I've come to realize the truth in it because it's made a difference for me.
Right. So so when you look at this, you have an experience that was sort of the missing chapter of the book. So if you can share that.
Absolutely. I'd been working on the book for a number of years, and I just felt like I had this nagging feeling it was just not complete. Lymphoma, that was the missing chapter, because I realized then that everything I had been writing about, it was literally as if it had prepared me for that journey. Now, I'm not saying it was a picnic, but there were things that I learned along the way about energy and intention. For example, people talk about battling cancer. I wasn't battling anything. And I knew in my heart that I wasn't supposed to be doing that, that it came to give me a gift. And so my intention was to walk with it, to learn from it, master the lessons quickly, and get through it as fast as I could. So the evidence of that, the doctors told me after the fact that I was one of the only patients they had that did not need a blood transfusion. Some people need one after the first treatment. I made it through 6 rounds of chemo, no blood transfusion, no nausea.
Wow.
I wasn't fighting it.
Wow. And your
cured
mindset around it though too, right? I mean, you went in with a completely different sort of attitude around it, right?
Well, it developed. I was scared at first, believe me, to get that news on my 48th birthday that, I might not live to see my 49th birthday was a bit traumatizing. But once I dealt with that. That's the key thing. Can you shift from negative to positive? Can you not say why me, but say what can I learn from it?
Right, right. So how long ago was that? How many years ago?
5 years ago this January.
5 years ago. Oh, that's right. I read that in the intro. So one of the things that's interesting, and this has totally piqued my interest to read this book, is your story. And I'm going to share something really quick. Tony from Mexico, a very wise man, someone who we work closely with, he had said, one of the things you should do in life is write a book, right? But the key to it is write a book that somebody wants to read, right?
It's always the trick, right?
And so writing a book is hard. And so what would you say was the hardest thing about pulling this book together and really physically getting it done, but also writing something that somebody wants to read?
The biggest part was finding the courage to share some of the things that people ordinarily wouldn't share. And I'm not just talking about medical things. One of the angels in my life was an ex-girlfriend who called me on the fact that I was being cheap. And that changed my life because I literally went from a place where I had a scarcity mentality to an abundance mentality. People look at my life now and they're like, how do you take so much time off? Where before I was too busy making stupid business decisions to appreciate any of that. So it's being clear about what's helped me, what's made a difference, and being willing to share that and not being embarrassed by it.
Yeah, so being really authentic, right?
Exactly.
Really sharing the deeper things, the inner GPS, right? The things that changed your compass. Okay, got it. So what would you say that people may be surprised by your assertion that you caused the lymphoma? Somewhere in there, I saw, if you could share that.
Sure.
Like, how is that possible?
My body's very literal.
Okay.
And so the year before I got diagnosed, I spent that entire year feeling depressed, disappointed, frustrated, because I'd been in this relationship that I thought was going to lead to marriage. I was really excited about it. And it ended with a disappearing act. And so I'm not blaming her for that. How I digest life is completely 100% on me. But you can't have negative energy coursing through your veins and body and not expect it to have a health impact. It was not a mystery that the biggest tumor was sitting right on top of my heart. The symbolism of that was not lost on me at all.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. But that's it. The emotional, the mental aspect.
It's almost like mind
is
over
a physical,
matter kind of thing. I mean, it's pretty extraordinary, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I totally agree. So one theme of the book is importance of many experiences is often more clear in hindsight. So talk about that a little bit, because as you look back, how did you kind of make the connection with what we say and what we experience kind of like shows up in your life?
Sure. Well, there's two things. Let's start with that connection between what we say and what we experience. If we're telling ourselves one thing, like people will walk into a meeting and they'll say, oh, this is going to be a complete disaster. You're going to create that if you do
disaster,
that, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
be careful what you ask for.
For sure.
Goes back to mindset.
Yeah, it's the law of attraction, right? Yeah. So, on the flip side, when you look at things, that have, those markers, those signposts that you couldn't necessarily have predicted. For example, I spent 3.5 years taking improv at Players Workshop in Second City here in Chicago. I did it because I didn't want to be afraid of public speaking. I didn't do it so that I would be a professional speaker. I would have thought you were nuts if you had told me that at the time. But that experience also proved to be really important, because when you combine that with the listening and the energy, it's helped me help companies when they're trying to deconstruct why they didn't win a deal. There was a $100 million deal that literally walked out the door, and the prospect said, I can't quite put my finger on it, but I'm not feeling confident moving forward. And as I watched what happened, I said, I know exactly what happened. There was this unconscious communication that occurred, and they respond predictably, even though they don't know why. And helping people avoid that has been one of the biggest inspirations for me, because that's why I do what I do.
So that's interesting, because we actually had Second City on where they talk about.
Oh, they're amazing.
Yeah, they are, because they really do kind of get at that active listening and the paying attention of what's going on around you, deeper than just words that are coming out. So, okay. So I know I don't want to run out of time here, but there's I want to walk through since going through cancer. what is the most important thing in your life to you right now? And what was sort of the most important thing before you found out you had cancer?
Well, it hasn't changed. I've always been really energized by helping people tap into their intuition and to trust that more, because that was one of the lessons that I learned along the way. The only thing that's really different is there's nothing like getting cancer on your 48th birthday to make you realize that you may not have as much time as you thought to achieve your goals. So it's inspired me to move a little faster.
Okay, that's good. How do you view taking risks now?
I'm all about risk taking.
Yeah.
Because if you don't try it, you know for sure what the outcome's going to be. And the problem is that people are attached to the outcome. Like when I left to become a trader, people were like, oh, that's so cool that you would take a cut of pay in half to join this training program and do this. But then a year later, they were like, well, boy, I hope things work out. I hope you're able to get your act together. And I thought, no, I'm not going to be your excuse for not taking a chance. You can't take a chance fully expecting it's going to play out. That's not a realistic expectation. You have to go head first and just trust that it will happen.
Yeah. It's the journey.
It is.
Right?
That's what makes it fun.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I'm all about that. Okay, so did you say this is your second book?
This is my second
book, right? Because the other one okay. So in terms of books that you've read, talk about maybe, 2 books that you've read that have helped you, whether it's helping you in business or whether it's helping you or that it's helped you sort of personally.
Absolutely. So start with business. The first book that I love is called Learn to Optimism by Martin Seligman. And this is a book, he ran the American Psychological Association for a while. It's really all about how do you get past that negative thinking. And so literally there's a quiz in the book. I was more optimistic just because of that book. And just from having taken the quiz, even without really practicing. So it's a great book.
Okay, that's cool. What about personally?
Personally, the one that I would point to, there's a book called Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss. And he's a doctor who would hypnotize people, and he discovered all this information about past lives, which he didn't even believe. So much like my book, his book started out with things that he didn't accept at the beginning, but has come to believe that they are in fact true.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what would you say in creating your business? Whether it was out there speaking, right, or whether it's with SullivanZyl, and that maybe was difficult, because I think for people that watch this show, a lot of times they look at this and go, I want to start a company, or hey, I'm in the middle of creating my company and dealing with a roller coaster ride, whatever it may be. Is there anything you can share that was sort of a learning or just a piece of advice about creating a company, running a company?
The best piece of advice I could share would be that when you take the first step, the universe meets you more than halfway. You have to get engaged and you have to be motivated to do something and not be attached to the outcome. Because the things that I've done, I couldn't have predicted this. It makes sense in hindsight. They were signposts on the journey every which way, but it's not like I planned it. And if you go 100 miles an hour in a direction and you have focus and you're passionate about it, you're going to end up in a good place. It might not be where you thought, but you'll end up in a good place.
Yeah, for sure. So one of two more quick questions.
Sure.
Where do you think you got your entrepreneurial spirit from?
My great-grandfather. He was a catcher with the White Sox, and he invented the chest protector. So I have to go back. I never met him, but it's changed many of my business interactions, just because he sold the patent. And he knew he never should have done that.
The patent? He
sold
the patent.
Wow.
Yeah, it's brutal. We probably have a private island somewhere now.
Right. Oh, man.
Oh, that's interesting. So one of the things I wanna make sure that I highlight is, when does your book come out? Because I want to make sure that I dive in and read it.
It will be out as soon as 2020.
Okay.
We say that because right now, as you may know, publishers are not marketers; they're more or less printers. And so, if you don't go there with a big platform and demonstrated support and pre-sales, they're going to throw it against the wall and nothing's going to happen. That happened with my first book. It's not going to happen with my second.
Got it.
For you, man.
Well, and so where can somebody find out more about it? Because I saw that that you can actually sign up to get updates?
Absolutely. Signpostbook.com is the best place to go.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome.
And where can somebody find out more about SullivanZyl if they want to check that out?
SullivanZyl.com.
Okay,
Awesome.
That's perfect. Thanks so much for joining us and sharing your story with us, Rob.
Oh, thank you. It was fun.
I really appreciate it. We're going to take a quick 90-second break. We're going to come back. Liz and Jenny are next. Let's Taste Straight Live.